Perfect. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Shelli Hawkins. I am the Director of Market Engagement here at Autura, and I'm also going to be your host for our first ever Autura webinar. So we are super excited for you all to join us. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about two of the top challenges that the towing and recovery industry professionals out there are experiencing not only in 2025, but historically. I'm also excited to welcome a couple of guests here for our webinar, Mr. Adrien Benoit from Elite Service Recovery and Towing, and also Jillian Grassetti, our Senior Vice President. I'm going to formally introduce them a little bit later, but before that, let's cover a few topics about the webinar. This webinar is going to be recorded, so we're going to share the recording shortly after we conclude the webinar with you all that have registered via your email. And it's also going to be available to view live and share from our website, autura.com. If you have any questions while we are having all these amazing discussions, please feel free to submit them via this question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. We are monitoring all those questions as we go, and we are certainly going to address them all. We look forward to all of your input. We're also going to share a couple of polls. They'll be popping up into the webinar. We look forward to your feedback on your thoughts about these questions that we're going to be sharing. And lastly, if you've not had a chance already, please be sure to download this year's State of Towing annual report at autura.com, like I mentioned earlier, because today's events were inspired by the challenges that we discovered when we did that report. So with all that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Mr. Adrien Benoit. He is the co-owner and Vice President of Elite Service Recovery and Towing in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Welcome, Adrien, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Shelli. Thank you guys for having me so much. You and Jillian have been amazing, and look forward to giving as much information as I can provide with my experience. So I'm excited to be here.
Perfect. We appreciate it. I'm equally as excited to introduce Ms. Jillian Grassetti. She is our Senior Vice President of Sales. She's going to help guide the conversation on those industry insights from the State of Towing annual report. Jillian, welcome.
Hi, Shelli. Happy to be here, and thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic. So without further ado, Ms. Jillian, why don't you start us off with a little background about how we even got here and a little bit more about the report.
Absolutely. So we just released the second ever State of Towing annual report. This is a culmination of data and insights we collected through an in-depth survey we sent to towing and recovery professionals across North America this year. This report offers real and impactful information about the industry coming straight from the most reliable sources, like Adrien, and other folks even who are joining this call, which we're super excited about, and the people who operate in this special industry every single day. So this report is incredibly important. It's a way that we can share insights, strategies, data, and ultimately support the towing community at large. And so as a bonus, this report also is a great way for us to learn more about our customers, their businesses, and needs. So as you can imagine, we don't have nearly enough time to discuss all of the data from the report today. So we're just going to focus on two industry challenges that surfaced in that survey. And you can find a deep dive of this specific topic in Chapter 1 of the report. So before we begin, I'd like to get a sense of what our attendees, everyone on this call today, see as their top 3 operational challenges in 2025 so far. So if we can pull up that survey and go ahead and select whatever you think is for your business, like the top 3 challenges. We'll give everyone a minute to select that. Okay, I think we're about to wrap up. All right, folks, do we have consensus? All right, super interesting. Okay, so it looks like insurance, staff, and legislation was the number 1 as voted by everyone on this. Interestingly enough, that aligns to what we found in our survey, and that was also the top 3 operational challenges, again, that we found from our survey respondents. Again, super interesting readout here. So, all right, guys, so that was, again, really fantastic engagement. Thanks for participating. And so I'd love to kind of get into it right now. So insurance continues to be a thorn in the side of towing and recovery businesses of all sizes. In fact, 62% of professionals cited rising costs and limited coverage as a major threat to their business. So, Adrien, insurance was the number one challenge across all revenue segments this year, and it was also one of the top challenges in 2024 in that survey as well. So, I'd love for you to share with the group your thoughts on today's current insurance landscape at large.
Yeah, insurance is a is a word that makes you just cringe when you're in the towing industry, right? The insurance market right now is very unhealthy. We're seeing as towers and automobile insurance commercial policies, we're seeing significant increases inside of the traditional markets. I've seen anywhere from $20,000 per unit all the way up to $50,000 per unit in insurance premiums, and that's huge for a towing company to undertake. So right now, I believe that the current insurance market is very unhealthy.
Thanks so much, Adrian. And so, for yourself and your business, did you make any, I guess, changes within looking at traditional insurance policies or potentially even moving into a captive?
Yeah, so currently we are inside of a captive program. We were in traditional insurance for many years. Traditional insurance is tough, right? So it's a you pay a premium to an outside carrier, right? And you're put inside of a pool of good companies, bad companies, and you're kind of intertwined together. So if the portfolio isn't doing well, everybody inside of that group is going to see significant increases. So traditional insurance is really tough. When you move into a captive program, it's more of a risk share. So you take on more risk, but you're able to control a few things, right? The claims, you're able to be a part of the claims process. They're not going to pay out the uh, on the claim unless you have acknowledgement of it. So the captive side of things has many benefits to it. There's also dividends that can be paid out through the process. So your traditional insurance policy, you're just paying in with no return. The captive side, you can receive some return and some funds, years down the road.
That was a really great overview, Adrian, for the group. But, I'd love to dig a bit more into, I guess, when you look at your business, obviously that was a big decision that you had to make in changing the status quo of going from, traditional insurance into a captive. So can you tell us a little bit more about what prompted, that thought process to even consider changing the status quo?
Yeah, absolutely. So our biggest thing was just the increases, right? The unstable market. Every year when it came up for renewal time, you just never knew what to expect. It
Mhm.
was always the thought process of, are we going to see 5%, 10%? It was not going down. You knew it was going up. And that was the tough part, understanding how much it was going up and why it was going up, right? Were we having lost runs? If we didn't have lost runs, what was our increase going to be like? So I think really going into a system like a captive program, it helps you control and understand your cost. You're not going to see big increases year over year. You may see some, whether it be you add equipment or you have some losses. So you're not going to see a major increase in your insurance through a captive program.
Hmm. And so so obviously there's folks on this webinar in varying degrees of, I guess, like the stages of their business. Obviously you and, your team have grown pretty significantly, but for someone who is, again, a growing business, what steps should they take if they wanted to learn more, again, about either, changing the status quo or even doing a deep dive as to whether or not a captive makes sense for their business? Like, what would you give them in terms of guidance?
So I think the biggest thing to understand when you're looking into getting into a captive program is you have to have your house in order, right? So you have to have your policies, your procedures, your safety manuals, your employee handbooks. All of that's got to be in place because when you join a captive program, it's risk sharing, right? So everybody in the group is putting in risk, right? They're assuming risk. And in order to be in the group, they want you to be a strong player. They don't want somebody that's going to come in and muddy up the water, not be doing things as they should be, and creating a lot of waves inside the system. So first thing is just having your house in order. With all these procedures in place, it really sets the tone. There's some interview processes that you have to go through, right? They're gonna interview you. They want to see, who you are, what you're about, how your operation runs, and you're not just interviewing with, the program itself. You're interviewing with people inside of the program, and then they will have a say in, if you get in or if you do not get in. Um, I think really setting the tone off the top, doing things when people aren't looking, making sure that your operation is ran in a fashion that it should be, right? Do you have safety measures in place, right? Do you have cameras inside of your trucks? Are you upholding your disciplinary policies? Are you making sure that your operation's safe? I think those are big key factors in order to get inside of a captive program.
That's incredibly helpful guidance. I think what's interesting is that some of the topics that you mentioned as helping you ensure that you can get into a captive obviously has other benefits, right, that stretch into the rest of the business, as well. Again, a little bit more of a tactical question here, but since it is renewal season, how far in advance should folks start to do their research? And again, whether it's changing traditional, policy, or excuse me, staying within a traditional type of insurance policy, or even exploring a captive.
Yeah, so our mindset, we're actually just now, starting the renewal process, and our date's all the way out till October 31st. And we've already began the process, sending off the paperwork, requesting loss runs. What makes it tough is a lot of the insurance companies, they want to see stuff within 30 days, right? To make sure that you don't have anything hidden. So it makes it tough to get your quotes in under 30 days, but the process should start at least 90 days out because there's just so much information that they're requesting. It takes time to get that from other carriers, whether it be lost runs that you may have with another company, to be able to get and then provide to the captive or to the traditional insurance company. But to answer your question, I think 90 days is a good mark where you should start shopping and getting your insurance stuff in line.
Great. Again, super helpful for the group. So we know that again, insurance is a huge headache, but wanted to move into another challenge and opportunity that our survey respondents highlighted. So costs, so increasing costs in pricing as an opportunity to help combat that cost and again, drive an efficient business. So in looking at the survey results, we found that 72% of towing and recovery professionals indicated that they plan or have already raised prices in 2025. And so, Adrien, aside from the rising insurance costs we were just discussing, what other factors are contributing to a higher cost of doing business in the towing and recovery space?
So there's quite a few that contribute to the rising cost, other than insurance. So we talk about fuel. Fuel is a huge cost to our operations. We haven't seen a huge spike in fuel in the last few years. I know we implemented fuel surcharges over a period of time. We've also put fuel on site, so that's helped reduce our cost. We get it for cheaper, um, roughly about 15 to 25 cents cheaper per gallon.
Mhm.
Plus, our guys aren't sitting at a truck stop or in a convenience store parking lot for 45 minutes to an hour trying to get fuel. So that's also helped reduce the efficiency, or reduce the response times that we have. Tires and parts, just in general, we've worked on getting on a national account for tire programs and parts programs over the last couple of years. From 22 is what I look back to 25. We've seen a 20 to 30% increase, not just in tires, parts, but also in the equipment that we operate. So getting on to national programs is a big help to reduce the cost of your tires and your parts. Employees, employees has been a huge cost, right? So in order to retain, to keep the good employees, you got to invest in them, whether that be in training, The cost per employee has increased. We all know that the employee pool is very shallow, and retaining them is very expensive. Um, cross training. Cross training has been a big deal, right? So how can we reduce some cost? We can use operators in different areas of our business, whether it's running a heavy duty rollback, equipment transport. If we cross train some of our guys to help us jump in different trucks to make ends meet, that helps out a lot. Preventative maintenance, we have our own mechanics in-house. So that does one of two things. We can reduce the cost of these mechanic shops, right? And our downtime. So if we have a truck go down, we get it repaired faster, we get it back up in an operation. The flip side of that is we do our own preventative maintenance. So we grease our trucks every 21 days. Our mechanics are coming in. Not only are they greasing our trucks, but they're also looking over them, trying to find any potential breakdown issues that could occur. So that's tremendous for us. Going into the how we run our operation and our calls. So we have a program that we just implemented recently called Truck in Motion. So we leave our trucks out in the field. So when a driver clears up on a call, we leave him roughly within a mile of where he clears up from. And that helps with our response times, our ETAs, helps us close calls a lot easier. And it just gives us more vision out there, right? Basically free advertising. Our trucks are sitting out on the roadways or on the side of the roadways, and people are passing by seeing them. So that's just a handful of ways that we've been able to reduce and also stabilize the pricing and the costs in our industry.
I mean, that's an impressive couple of examples, right? I feel like in, previous conversations that we've had, it's really not a matter of reducing costs, right? It sounds like there aren't many places where you can actually reduce costs. So stabilization, making those predictable is really the name of the game. And again, that was like a pretty tremendous list, right, that you've been able to carve out of your business. So moving on to pricing, right? So pricing, increasing pricing is a way to, again, continue to drive a profitable and efficient business. So when it comes to raising prices, even Adrian, with your own accounts, do you find that you need to justify raising prices with your customers? And I guess if so, how do you approach that?
So I like to think of it not as justifying, but communicating, right? So I feel like if you communicate to your customers about price increases, they have an understanding, right? Because we're all going through the same things. We're all having an increase of cost, whether it's operational. The I think if we help them understand the value that we bring to the table, right? What we're doing different than the other companies out there, whether we're running MVR checks, background checks, we're doing continuous education with our guys, the safety that we implement as far as the cameras in our trucks, the GPSs, the digital dispatching. All this goes hand in hand with what we have to offer to the customer. And I think communicating that to them helps tremendously with them understanding that we're going to have a 2 or 3% increase this year and year over year, right? Because in order for us to keep advancing our services, and what I mean by that is putting new equipment on our trucks, right? The 8-point tie downs, the high end bridles. In order for us to keep getting better and doing the job as good as we know how to do it, we have to keep advancing our services. And that's a cost to the company, an operational cost. These cars are not getting any easier to tow with the electronic parking brakes and the bigger trucks with the electronic brake over air. It's all getting very difficult to tow, and it's also requiring more equipment to be able to tow them. So just communicating the cost to your customers, letting them know why you're increasing your price instead of just saying, oh well, everything's going up. If you lay it out there for them in more of a manner they can understand, I think it goes over a lot easier. Just recently, went and sat down with one of the dealerships in our local area, and they had the mindset that our price was too high. Right, we've been doing work for them for a while. Other companies come in there, promise that they can do it cheaper. Explain to the service manager what we do differently, right? How we do things, what we have to offer. I think the biggest takeaway out of that whole deal was when I explained to the service manager, I said, take a week. Every time a tow truck comes into the facility, I'd love for you to walk out there, take a look at it, do a walk around, see how they have the vehicle secured, take a peek inside the truck, and ask yourself, is that something that you would want to ride in? Is that something you want to put your family with or in? Is that does that driver look like that's somebody you want your family to ride with? Really lay it out there for them. Let them make their own interpretation of it. And it was a week later, I think he called and he's like, "You're right. This makes sense. I see the difference in your services versus what's been coming into the dealership. And we got a 1 year exclusive deal with this dealership." So
Love it.
I think just communicating, going above and beyond for the customer is always great, but opening their eyes to what you have to offer, right? We have values in the services we provide. Sometimes we just have to tell them what they are, let them see it.
But Adrian, when we again were chatting before and you shared that story, I thought that that was one of the more compelling stories, right, that the guests could take away. Because at the end of the day, you feel confident in the services that you provide. You're investing in the ability for the employees to even deliver those services. And so, sometimes there's, just a world where you have to let the customer see for themselves. And again, I think that that's a great anecdote, right, um, that we can all leave with. Um, okay.
100
Oh, Shelly, go ahead.
saying if you've ever had a chance to see Adrian's trucks, they are always immaculate, presentable, as well as his employees. So I can attest to being witness to all that. And I was just curious, have you ever, just like let's say in the last 5 years, lost a commercial customer and been able to win them back? And how did you do that? And if not, that's okay. I know I'm putting you
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. I think we've all lost a commercial customer or a customer over the years, it doing be due to a price increase. You always have competitors knocking on your customers' doors, offering a service that's cheaper than what you're doing, right? Usually when this happens, it doesn't take long for them to notice the difference, right? Whether the truck was on time, if they handled the situation appropriately, um, a bunch of factors that go into play. But yes, we have lost customers over the years, and 95% of the time, it doesn't take long for them to come back.
That's fantastic. I love that.
All right. So remember, we just covered two topics surfaced by our survey respondents today. Kind of coming back to the group here, we'd love to hear from you all as to what topic you think we should dive into for the next webinar that we're doing. So again, this is our first time doing this. We did it for 30 minutes. I think I would argue that we probably could keep going for the full hour, but if you don't mind heading over to the chat, let us know where you think we should, again, pull in another resource like Adrien, and have another discussion. Let's see who's,
I think the
don't
chat,
be shy.
yeah, I think the chat is open now for you guys to put up some of your questions for Jillian and Adrien. Um, I know that there's lots of captives out there. We had a couple folks ask some more questions about captives. Have you seen any captives out there, Adrien, that is a mix of not only towing industry professionals, but also a mix of like other fleet type industries?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen actually the captive program that we are in right now has a mix of different industries, right? Towing, there's waste hauling and sand and gravel in the captive that we're in right now. And then there's captives out there that is only towers.
Okay,
Both programs are great, right? In the mixture of the group, you just have different companies. The risk may be a little lower, and then when you're in the group with all towers, you get to brainstorm off each other. You get to talk to each other, share potential customers, challenges, trial and errors. So there's goods and bads for both sides.
perfect. Do you know of the captives that you have been in and aware of and kind of researching on your own? Do they provide, we've got a question here, do they provide umbrella and or workers' comp? Is that included in the ones that you know about, Adrian?
Yes, they do all provide the umbrella, and they do all provide workman's comp.
That's fine.
Now some of them will let you venture out and get your workman's comp policy, on your own and still be in the captive. And then some programs out there make you buy everything through the captive.
That's really good insight. Um, is there any knowledge on how much cheaper is a captive by percentage? I guess as far as your overall cost per year once you can get in, as compared to traditional insurance.
Yeah, so it's tough to say on that part. Everything's going to boil down to your loss runs on what you're going to pay, but I think the savings is going to come over time, right? So your traditional insurance, they don't really fight on your behalf. They seem to more just write a check for the claims, make it go away, but it then goes on your loss runs. Where when you're in the captive program, they're really fighting for you. You're not just a number, you're a name, you're in the group, you're one of them, and they do more fighting for you at the table. So they're trying to control your loss runs. Just something as simple as a rear end damage, rear end claim could be 20,000 bucks within the captive, but if you're in a traditional policy, that thing may be 150 grand.
Makes sense. So many questions are coming in about the captives. One more, to your knowledge, is there a captive out there that potentially would be dedicated to private property impounding, illegal parked cars, and also repossessions? Have you heard of anything like that or know of folks that focus on that are in captives that you've been in?
I don't know on that question,
Yeah.
but I imagine if you're running a clean operation, you're
True.
it just boils down to if you're running a clean operation, right? They're in the insurance industry, they're there to make money. So I don't see why they would just say no, directive of what business you're trying to operate.
100%. A great comment from one of our folks out there says a captive is not necessarily cheaper. Don't think of it necessarily that way. It's more about control and claims and having skin in the game. Once you're invested in it, you're going to take it a lot more seriously. Hiring and retention is something that's coming up quite a bit. So, as far as like finding those folks, keeping them a part of your organization, training them, making them feel that they are a valuable part of your company, crucial to the operations. How do you go about that? Give us a little bit more detail around that.
So on the hiring part, is that what you're referring to, Shelly?
Yes.
Gosh, it's tough, right? We advertise in several different markets, whether it's Facebook, it's Indeed. There's a couple of platforms out there in our advertising budget. We push out Facebook ads that'll pop up in between different videos, trying to recruit, right? That seems to be the hardest part. And then bringing them in, getting them trained. Uh, they may flop out within 2 weeks. You just never know. And I don't think there's a science to it. So sometimes we know they're going to make it. Sometimes we think they're going to make it and they don't make it. But I think just giving them the best opportunity, right? Don't judge up front. Provide the most training that you can. We have a process where we'll train a new employee for 2 or 3 weeks, push them through our system. If we feel confident in their ability, we move forward with them. If we don't believe they're going to be a good operator or we're not confident in their ability, we just kind of move on. So like they said, they asked a question earlier or made a statement, being in the captive program, you have skin in the game and you want to make sure that you're looking out for the captive program as well. So you can't just put anybody in a truck and hope for the best.
100%. And more than anybody on this webinar, the challenges in the towing industry for our operators. Talk one more, as we are beginning to wrap up things. Once you do have that operator is trained, they are a performer, they love what they're doing. What are your steps to retain them over X amount of years? Because that's the goal.
Yeah, so we have, we have evaluations every year annually, and we do increases in pay rates. We also do a couple of spiffs, we pay on a biweekly basis. So every pay period, if their driving scores within a certain percentage, they get a spiff, $2 more an hour in pay. We try to provide them with the best equipment, the best knowledge, the best training. But I think a lot of it comes down to pay. You got to be competitive on what you're paying these guys. You can't expect them to work their tails off and for a good paycheck. So we've built some structure. We've created some additional shifts. We're giving a lot of these guys more of a home work life balance, and that has seemed to be the biggest retention of employees.
Love that. Training does matter. One of our attendees mentioned. Perfect. Any more questions? We'll hold off for a little bit. We've got some other fantastic questions rolling in that we're going to save for the next webinar. So thank you all.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more to unpack from the state of towing report. I think even the questions coming into the chat is a good indication of where we definitely should focus next. But once again, Adrien, thank you so much for joining again our first ever webinar to discuss this really impactful report. And thanks to everyone who carved out the time to join us. So Shelli, back to you to wrap it up.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. Look forward to more information coming about our next webinar series. And as always, if you have any questions, go to www.autura.com, follow us on our socials, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for having us.